Self.
This meeting is being recorded.
Thank you, Farrokh. My name is Percy Master. I'm the Global President of WZCC. And I welcome all of you today for our first inaugural WZCC ZFN Spotlight. We wanted to highlight the success stories of our Zarathustri entrepreneurs and professionals worldwide. We wanted our youth to learn from their success and failures and how they overcome various difficulties to be successful. We must all bear in mind that it is not easy to become an entrepreneur or a successful professional. It takes a lot of perseverance, commitment, and certain amount of calculated risks. We wanted to give a suitable name to this program. And while discussing this in our international board meeting, Dr. Zubin Sethna was the first one to come out with the suggestion of WZCC Spotlight. I think he deserves to be the first amongst many to inaugurate this spotlight today. Welcome, Dr. Zubin, and thanks for your commitment to WZCC. It is our endeavor to encourage entrepreneurs and professionals in their economic, intellectual, and social commitment towards the society at large. WZCC's slogan for the next years is Power of Youth Driving Future Generations. We will be failing in our duty if we don't encourage our youngsters to be successful in their lives, which in turn will complement the growth of our community. We may be small in numbers compared to other communities, but we have produced from time to time exceptional individuals who have not only excelled themselves in their business or profession, but have contributed towards their wealth and expertise for the progress of the countries they resided in. This has been the principle of our community for thousands of years. When we came from Iran to India, we committed to the success of India in lieu of the shelter that was given to us in our most trying times when our survival was at stake. We in turn gave everything and adopted India as our motherland. We fought for the country's independence. We developed business houses that became the best in the world. We made hospitals and educational institutions to develop India to what it is today. It is a matter of pride for all of us that we belong to a community that lives by the principles of good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. Humata, hukata, huvrasta. The time has come for us not to be complacent and bask in our past glory. This is the time for our youth to make all-out efforts for the resurgence of our community. WZCC on its part, along with ZFN, will try its level best to do this. Our sincere thanks to Professor Dr. Farrokh Mistree for conceptualizing and conducting this wonderful program. Compliments to Dr. Karishma Koka for her valuable inputs. And of course, to our dynamic past president, Edul Daver, for the enthusiasm that it brings to this program. I must also acknowledge the efforts put in by the three youngsters, Farzin, Vispi, and Zeaan, in this program by bringing out their questions and inputs. Why this emphasis on economic, social, and intellectual value? The answer is very simple. Education is the most powerful weapon which can be used to change the world. Economic and social values come out of this powerful medium, which we must all pursue and encourage our youth to adapt. We also want our youth to remember that life is about making an impact, not just making an income. Youth must remember that whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Trust in your dreams, for in them is hidden the gateway to eternity. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. And I believe that Zubin loves a cup of tea. And I think it is time in the morning to have a cup of tea with Zubin. So over to you, Farrokh.
Thank you, Percy, for those inspiring words. And this spotlight is under the auspices of the World Zoroastrian Chamber of Commerce. And the emphasis in the World Zoroastrian Chamber of Commerce is recognizing that entrepreneurship is the pursuit of opportunity beyond resources control. That's a very important issue, that it's beyond resources control. And imagine that we have this light here, and imagine today that we have Zubin Sethna out here. He's on the screen, he's got a hat on, but this is the WZCC logo. And Zubin loves tea, knows about marketing, being a serial entrepreneur, not just a social entrepreneur, but a serial entrepreneur. He's an author, he's a speaker, and an academic. And so we are delighted to have him share his life story with us. And then we have Karishma Koka, who will say a few words about what this spotlight is about and how we are pulling it together. And we have Dialog Initiators from the younger generation, Farzin Avari, Zeaan Pithawala, Vispi Karkaria, who will introduce themselves and then indicate to you what their theme of questioning is going to be. And I, of course, will be the moderator. So with that, let us proceed. So we've heard Percy Master, you're hearing me. There'll be a commentary by Zubin Sethna for about 20 minutes. Karishma, then we'll have Zubin Sethna. There'll be questions to Zubin Sethna from 3 Zartusti youth, Farzin Avari, Vispi Karkaria, Zeaan Pithawala. Questions from participants. We want there to be a dialogue, so we will open it up to the floor. So as we are going through, please make notes of the questions and who you would like to talk to, because we'd like to get to as many people as possible. Keep the questions short, and we've told Zubin to keep his answers very short. So that way we will get through a lot of people and cover a lot of ground. And then there'll be closing remarks from Zubin Sethna, Edul Daver, and perhaps a few words from me. We are looking at this being approximately 90 minutes. And after the formal presentation is over, in the usual way, we turn off the recording and we continue chit-chatting. And sometimes this chit-chatting goes on about anything. It has nothing to do with, it may not have anything to do with the talk, but it's chit-chatting and coming to know each other and network. So what are we about? The World Zartusti Chamber of Commerce, in partnership with the Zartusti faculty and academia, envision empowering Zartusti students to learn how to create economic, cultural, and intellectual value. So our focus is on 3 values: economic, cultural, and intellectual, and maximizing the nexus between the 3. The mission of the Zoroastrian Faculty Network is to facilitate Zartusti youth through higher and specialized education to pursue careers in industry, government, academia, as business entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, knowledge entrepreneurs, etc. The webinars that we have are conversations to help Zartusti youth with support from their parents to attain higher and specialized education. This is important. These webinars are meant for the family with parents and children. So what about the spotlights? The WZCC ZFN spotlight, we spotlight a luminary from the Zartusti community who is a role model for Zartusti youth to emulate as they strive to maximize the nexus between economic value, social value, and intellectual value. And Dolly Contractor, I have not met you before. I understand you are the mother of Zubin Sethna. So this is something, a special thing. We are highlighting your son, and so you must have done something right to make it happen. So this is a great example of parents getting involved and helping their children get spotlighted. And this initiative is supported by R.D. Sethna Scholarship Fund and also the ZF scholarships, ZF Scholarship of the WZCC. So with that, Zubin, the mic is yours. Please take us through your life's journey, and we look forward to your talk.
Thank you very much, Farrokh, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to friends and family, colleagues all around the world. It's a delight to be here. My name is Zubin Sethna, and for the next 20 minutes or so, I'd like to talk to you about my entrepreneurial journey, my life journey, I guess, in a way, and what gets me to where I'm kind of sitting today, as it were. On the slide here, you see a few kind of standard bits of information on me in terms of qualifications, my current position as a tenured professor of entrepreneurial marketing and consumer behavior at Regent's University London, and a couple of other things that I do, bits and pieces. But let's move on from that, Farrokh. Next slide, please. I'm very much going to be talking to you about my entrepreneurial journey today. And I guess that really, next slide, please, that really starts with a roadmap. Okay, now that roadmap is very much my life, as it were, and I'd like to start at the very beginning. So, look, when I was about 10 years old, my parents went through a very, very nasty, bad divorce. As a 10-year-old, I guess I saw things that perhaps no 10-year-old should ever actually see. By the time I was 12 years old, I was dealing in coke. Now, that might surprise you, okay? I am, of course, talking about Coca-Cola, right? As a 12-year-old, we grew up behind Wimbledon tennis courts. And so as a 12-year-old, I figured out that actually all these people standing in the queues waiting to buy tickets at Wimbledon had no refreshments on their doorstep and couldn't leave the queues. So I basically used to buy cans of Coke, or at least I did this for 1 year, buy cans of Coke and then go and resell it to them for about 1,000% profit. And so that taught me a very quick lesson in terms of supply and demand. By the time I kind of got to school, because of what was going on at home, unfortunately, I had a very torrid time at school, to the point where basically I finished school at 16, and on the very last day of school, my Latin teacher, who I went to say goodbye to, he looked at me and basically said, "Sethna, you were always a failure. You will always be a failure. Now get out of here," right? So that kind of stuck with me in terms of what potential failure is all about. Next slide, please. So look, I'm going to give you a bit of a quote. Entrepreneurship requires action and practice. So this comes from Muhammad Yunus. And Muhammad, this is what he said: all humans are entrepreneurs. When we were in the caves, we were self-employed, finding our food, feeding ourselves. That's where human history began. As civilization came, we suppressed it. We became labor because they stamped us, "You are labor." And we forgot that we were entrepreneurs. Next slide, please. Now, the reason that quote resonates with me and is quite poignant is because Mr. Yunus, Professor Yunus, realized back in the 1970s with the founding of the Grameen Bank that there were many, many, many micro businesses out there who couldn't get access to funding, who couldn't get access to support. And so he started to actually provide these micro loans as we know them today. And as at 2022, this year, they've loaned nearly 18 billion to nearly 9 million borrowers. Next slide, please. Now, that's important because of what I'm about to tell you. When I left school, I got a job with a company called Millicom, who made me redundant after a year. And I didn't know what to do with myself. I had very few qualifications. I qualified with 7 O-levels when all of my friends had qualified with 15, 16 O-levels. So as far as the school was concerned, I was a bit of a failure. Now, when I was about 13 years old, I had started DJing in our old Zoroastrian house in West Hampstead. And that DJing basically became something that I did with a friend, a then friend of mine. Next slide, please. So that DJing business, DJing hobby became a bit of a business, basically. And I did, when I was made redundant after Millicom, I decided that actually, what are my skills that I have? Because I don't have many qualifications. What are the skills that I have? Let's utilize those skills. And so I started doing mobile DJing, and actually it became quite successful. Next slide, please. Successful to the point that actually I had an order book that was about 6 months going forward, but I had a cash flow problem, right? I didn't have enough cash to properly get going. And so back then, I had heard of this chap this uncle, right, within our community, who was relatively wealthy and who I thought may be able to help me out with a £5,000 loan. So one Tuesday afternoon, I met with this uncle and I asked him very politely that, look, I have this order book full of orders for the next 6 months, but I'd have a bit of a cash flow problem. The money hasn't come in yet. I will be doing these gigs. They're with, big corporates. However, could you loan me £5,000, please? And the uncle said, sorry, Dikra, I'm really sorry, son. Times are really hard just now and I can't help you. That was a Tuesday. On that Saturday, that very same uncle had a bana party, a card party, right? And on the turn of one card, and I heard this later on because I have mutual, other sort of friends of my parents who were at this party. On the turn of one card, that uncle lost £15,000. And his response at that very moment was, or words to that effect, Chal, doesn't matter, let's just carry on, let's have a drink, let's have some food, right? Now that again taught me some lessons here, basically. So a bit despondent, I went to a local enterprise agency in Wandsworth, nearby where I lived. And lo and behold, I met a chap called Jamshid Engineer, who I thought, okay, well, that sounds like Jamshid sounds like a Parsi name. So we had a conversation. Turns out he was a Parsi, lovingly known as Jumpy. Unfortunately, Jumpy passed away just last year. However, Jumpy gave me my start in life, my real entrepreneurial start, because he managed to get me a £5,000 Princess Youth Business Trust grant, which I never had to pay back. And so following that, I later became a mentor for Princess Trust businesses. And of course, one of the other things that I do now is run the enterprise coffee evenings for the WZCC, where I give help and advice and mentorship and support to other fledgling businesses. Next slide, please. That business that I was talking about, the DJing, where I basically did that for about 3 years full time, made a fair amount of money from it. I had 4 or 5 other DJs working for me, but the business had been started with a friend of mine when I was 13 years old. But to cut a long story short, when I went to my friend and said, listen, we need to sort this out because you're not really doing much for a lot of money, friend turned into foe, and it turned into a bit of a legal battle. So my lesson there, my learning there was always have a contract in place, no matter who you're dealing with. Next slide, please. I bumbled along this road that we call kind of my life story. I realized that actually qualifications were the license or the ticket or the key to doors that were formerly closed to me. And so alongside various jobs that I would be doing during the daytime, I managed to make the commitment to go to evening school. And all the qualifications that you see, next slide, please, on the slide there, were actually both academic and professional qualifications, were all achieved through evening school and working full-time for various organizations. Now, my journey has led me to periods of employment with organizations, with SMEs predominantly, and periods in between of self-employment, where I've started enterprises on my own. Next slide, please. So entrepreneurship may be different than what you think. Okay, so entrepreneurship is a sexy word. It's a word that's bandied around quite often, but what actually is it? Okay, it's actions taken by an individual or group to create something new, a new idea, a new item or product, a new institution, a new organization, a new market, a new set of possibilities. It doesn't just relate to business, right? So remember that. Next slide, please. Because small businesses and SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, have played a significant role in my life. Okay, next slide, please. It was whilst I was employed then that one of my sisters, Shiraz, my sister after me, trained as an aromatherapist, and very quickly, having qualified, managed to get a full-time job or full-time work servicing older clients within a care home sector. And so Shiraz and her now husband Noshe, who was our friend then, the three of us got together and we realized that actually there could be an opportunity here. And so we took a couple of years of planning and doing research and speaking to lots of people before we actually jumped into developing this company, Therapy on Hand. And at its height, we had about 30, 35 therapists working for us in the care home markets, the residential care homes and nursing homes throughout the South London and the Southeast. And really, that was a section of society. So it wasn't just economic value that we were deriving from this. It was social or societal value as well, because through the work that we were doing, through the massage and the oils and the aromatherapy, not only was there a physiological benefit, not only was there a psychological benefit, and not only was there a pharmacological benefit in terms of the aromatherapy itself, there was a very much a societal benefit, because many of the people that we saw in these care homes had been left there by their family or whoever, and they had very, very little social interaction. So we did that for a handful of years. Next slide, please. Back in '97, I also set up Beresman Consulting. Now, Beresman, the word actually comes from the root Avastan word bares, meaning to grow. And so for a number of years, or since '97 now, I've been helping other SMEs in whatever shape or form, whether it's paid work or whether it's pro bono work, to actually think about their entrepreneurial marketing, think about their management, and think about their setup, and to help and support them in whichever way I can. Next slide, please. 16 years ago, my wife and I, Nawaz and I, well, Nawaz mainly, but obviously we're a partnership. We set up, or we bought into a Kumon franchise. Kumon is a Japanese philosophy, a way of teaching maths and English. It's a methodology of teaching maths and English to young children. So we got into it because initially we wanted to put our 3 children through the Kumon program, but we couldn't afford to put three children through the dual subject maths and English program. And we were thinking there must be some other way. And lo and behold, about a month later, we saw an advert for a Kumon instructor. So we bought into the franchise. That was 16 years ago. We've been renting premises all this time, school halls, church halls, that kind of stuff. But I'm delighted to say that about 6 weeks ago, after a 2.5, 3 year negotiation, we finally managed to secure our own premises. So we've got 1,000 square feet in Wembley that you see on the screen there. And classes started last week. All of our, whatever, 260, 70 students who are coming in 3 or 4 times a week are very, very happy in their new home, as it were. Next slide, please. So over the years, there's a lot going on in my life. From not just from the SMEs, my love of entrepreneurial marketing, that's bringing those 2 disciplines together, my professional network with the Academy of Marketing and the Academy of Marketing Science in the US, and the Global Research Conference on Marketing and Entrepreneurship, which I sit on the board of. I have a variety of books to my name in entrepreneurial marketing space and in consumer behavior. And I'm the editor-in-chief, or actually I was the editor-in-chief up until last week. I'm now I've taken a step back after 7 years of being editor to an associate editor role. Next slide, please. So really this came about because, having come from industry, as a practitioner, when I came into academia, the question was asked, well, what are you going to be researching on? What are you going to be teaching on? And of course, I brought my love of those 2 areas, the entrepreneurship and marketing, together. And that was my first book back in 2013 on entrepreneurial marketing, global perspective. Next slide, please. But that looks at it from the organizational perspective. Of course, the organization can't survive without its consumers. And so giving something, putting something out there in terms of the consumer behavior and why it's relevant to organizations was very important to me. And indeed, that 3rd edition that you see, the donut there, that sold I think in excess of about 18,000 copies. Next slide, please. In addition to those, I'm writing an entrepreneurial marketing theory and practice book at the moment that's pitched at final year undergraduate / master's students. And I've contributed to a whole bunch of other very, very important books in the kind of CB or consumer behavior and marketing space. Next slide, please. Many times when we think about entrepreneurship, we can you ask anyone about famous entrepreneurs, and around the world generally this list will come up. Of course, these can be country specific. We all know about the Ratan Tatas of this world, and and so on and so forth. Next slide, please. But as far as I'm concerned, there are these 7 truths about entrepreneurship that I have been fortunate enough to abide by, to live by, and essentially, without going into too much detail right now, what these have taught me personally is that there is a right voice and a wrong voice that entrepreneurs, that individuals hear constantly. But it's about the choices that you make in terms of which voice is going to be more powerful. Next slide, please. Some years ago, I was also fortunate enough to be a judge on the Shell Livewire Young Entrepreneur of the Year competition. And that was through the Prince's Trust and the mentoring and the coaching that I was doing with those fledgling businesses. And that was very exciting because it really took me right back to when I was 17, sitting in that small office with Jumpy at the Enterprise Center. And knowing all the kind of frustrations and the fear all came back. And so knowing how I felt, I could then put all those fledgling businesses at ease. Next slide, please. I am a fervent supporter of the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, GEM. If none of you have come across it, then you should absolutely have a look at it. Back in 2020, I was also very fortunate and very humbled to be elected as an expert, apparently, on family businesses, entrepreneurship, and the future of consumption by the World Economic Forum. And so I continue to do some work with them. Next slide, please. A few years ago, we in the UK, certainly the Zoroastrian Trust Funds of Europe, one of our associations that look after the Jatosti community, started work on a project to put together a care home for our aging population. Now, having done a feasibility study, I very quickly kind of came to the conclusion that actually this might be a 10 to 15-year project, if at all. And so that's great. We should, of course, strive towards that. But there was a more immediate need. Okay, and so some friends that you see on the screen here and we started the CZC, which stands for the Care in the Zoroastrian Community. It's a Zoroastrian initiative to basically help older people right here, right now. Okay, regardless of whatever association they actually belong to. And we felt that this kind of social value of trying to alleviate isolation and loneliness within our community, within the elders within our community, was of paramount importance. Actually, what then transpired was that through lockdown, we realized that a number of people didn't have access to food or drink because they couldn't get out. And so we managed to help and support about 22 people for about 7 months. I was going out every other day, literally, to do food drops to those people. So there on the screen there, you see some lovely pictures of some of the stuff that we've been involved with. Okay, last slide then, in the last 10 seconds that I've got on my screen here, Farrokh, because I'm timing myself. Good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. Every Zoroastrian has heard about these. I have to say, oh, I'm sorry, that's me. Sorry, that was me. I have to say I'm not overtly religious. However, being a Zoroastrian gives me an identity. Okay, gives me an identity. And I try and live by these principles not necessarily from a religious perspective, but more from an ethical and a moral perspective. Okay, and there you have it, folks. That is my life in 20 minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Zubin, for sharing your story to inspire us so that we can go on to educate ourselves better. Zubin left us and brought us to a point where we think about Humata Hukta Varshta, and the World Zartoshti Chamber of Commerce aims to maximize this nexus between intellectual value, which we can relate to Humata, economic and social value that occurs both through good word and good deed, which is Hukta and Varshta. And the Zoroastrian faculty network seeks to increase value in the domains economic, intellectual, and social by maximizing the synergy, while the WZCC maximizes the nexus. In order to grow entrepreneurship, Zubin related us to the word Baresma. So the Gathas talk about the three words as Vangeush Mainush, Ukdakyacha, and Shotnacha. We can relate to Shotnacha because we tie our kasti on the word Shotananam. And we know that all of these principles lead us towards taking good action for growth, Frashokerati, and progress. Zubin gave us the 7 values of entrepreneurship, and I will focus on just 4. Learning with practice, because Zubin said entrepreneurship can be taught. By corollary, that means value-driven learning. In the Zoroastrian faith, we have the Amesha Spentas that teach us how to learn, to grow knowledge, or Mazda, through good action within ourselves and in our surroundings, through the good mind, Asha, to build good Shatrin, which is good strength. But learning requires listening. Zubin talked about giving back, but he also talked about identifying what is needed. That requires listening to what's outside. He also talked about the good mind, the good voice and the not so good voice, and how to listen to the difference. Yasna 30.2 gives us this. It tells us, listen, reflect with a bright intellect, then decide to take action, leading to what Asho Zarathustra gives us in 30.3, which is learn how to discriminate, Vishyata. We learn this in every entrepreneurial school, that value-driven learning leads to evaluation of a plan that minimizes risk. We heard this through Edul Daver's talk last month on risk assessment and calculated risk, which requires knowledge and learning. But then it's about adding value through good action and sharing that. Zubin elaborated on how this can be achieved, and the Yathahu Varyo gives us the formula. It says, with a good mind, work in line with Asha to build good action, Shotananam, and strength for Aura Mazda, inside us and around us, Bahukshatrim. But then it gives us in the last line that we need to become Vastarems. Vastarem is translated by many as caretaker. Caretaker is the original word from which, guess what? Entrepreneur comes. This requires a team, as Zubin has elaborated. It started with his mum, went through his family, and now goes into the community. So this collaboration, which we are celebrating here today in the community, from where we can go out into the world, is what is said in the Airyamaishya, where we say, let us come together with people of similar thought to build that which is right. And we celebrate it through the Yenge Hatam, where we say, Atyasne Paiti Vango, let us celebrate those people who work with Asha, take good action, and let us attune and resonate with them so that we can add our strength to build progress of Rashokerati. So we have it. Thank you, Zubin, for that fantastic story, which the WZCC ZFN spotlights today. The story that we can learn from, be inspired by, and emulate. With that, may I please hand over to our three dynamic youth, led by Vispi Karkaria, to take us through the dialogue section, first between them and then with you, our audience. So please start putting your comments and your questions into the chat box. Over to you, Vispi.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for this exciting talk as well. So now we'll start our dialogue. And we are three dialogue initiators, and I'll first introduce myself. So I'm Vispi Karkaria, and I'm currently pursuing my PhD in mechanical engineering at the Northwestern University. Now I would like to invite Farzin to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Farzin Avari. I am the co-chair for ZINA, that's the Zoroastrian Youth of North America. I currently work as a virtual science teacher and beta club sponsor at Georgia Connections Academy. I will be asking questions related to education and family. Next, I would like to invite Zeaan to introduce himself.
Hello everyone, I'm Zeaan Pithawala and I'm pursuing BSc Honours Biochemistry from University of Delhi, India. I'm also pursuing BSc in Data Science and Programming from IIT Madras, and I'm interested in pursuing a PhD in computational biology. I would be asking questions regarding success, and over to you, Vispi.
Thank you very much. And my first question is, I was very keen to know about it. How would you like to be remembered in the future?
Excellent. Oh gosh, thanks, Vispi. How would I like to be remembered in the future? Well, I'm not dead yet, not about to die. I think you know what? I'm not too fussed about how the wider world will remember me. What I am fussed about is being a role model for my own children, for my own kids. I am bothered about how they're going to remember me. And I think if they can remember me as someone who was always available to others, and someone who gave constantly, you know, whether it's time, resources, whatever, you know, I'm a very giving person. So if they can remember me with those two things in mind, I'll be happy.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Oh, Farzin, you are on mute.
Sorry. Please share with us some of your resources or some of the sources of motivation through your life.
Okay, sources of motivation through my life. I think having variety is really, really important to me. I was talking to my wife Nawaz about this, and I was asking her what she thought of this question earlier on, and she was saying, you're someone, me, who doesn't like the humdrum, doesn't like the kind of just the regular normality stuff. You know, I think motivational terms, if you want to call it that, certainly self-validation, you know, knowing that I can do something if I put my mind to it. Curiosity, I'm very curious. You know, I have 1,000,001 different things going on in my life, in all sorts of areas and avenues. I'm very curious about life. And I guess the intrinsic process, perhaps, which is just doing something for the sheer fun of it, you know, and just getting stuck in, basically. And along the way, you know, you may actually benefit others. So that's what motivates me.
Thank you.
Yes.
Next?
So my question is, what is the difference between management, leadership, and entrepreneurs?
Okay, so what's the difference between management, leadership, and entrepreneurship? Okay, I guess they're not mutually exclusive. That's the thing, okay? You know, when many people make the mistake that when you hear, you know, the terms management, leadership, and/or entrepreneurship, you know, you think that these are two separate entities or beings. They're not mutually exclusive. Let's look at the definitions for a second, okay? Entrepreneurship actually refers to the set of attributes that an individual has or possesses and practices in starting an enterprise. Management and leadership is all about the process of influencing people and then providing an environment for them to achieve organizational objectives. If you don't have an entrepreneurial manager, they're not going to be able to influence their team within an organizational setting, right? And so the whole thing comes crashing down. So I think let's not make the mistake that there's a difference between management, leadership, and entrepreneurship. All three are very, very tightly knit. And I'll say no more on the subject just now because we're running out of time. Go ahead.
Thank you so much.
So my next question is, how important is it to expose entrepreneurship to children at a very young age? And what is the role of their parents? And what is the role of higher education in it?
Okay, all right. So I feel that I think it's really, really important to expose young children to the principles of entrepreneurship. Okay, even if you don't talk about entrepreneurship per se, but the principles that underpin entrepreneurship from a very young age. So let me give you a very personal example with my own 3 children. Maya, my daughter, who's at university doing an MEng in design engineering, when she was about 15 or so, she designed and manufactured wallets for that held women's personal care items, and she sold those with a team of her friends in school. My son Kai developed a company or an entity called London Hype when he was about 14, and this was selling hyped clothing as a reseller. And he's got something like 4,000 followers on Depop now. Dilnawaz Shroff, I'm not sure if Dilnawaz is on the call or not, but she runs out of Canada, the Youngpreneurs program, and she'll know all about my younger son, Kaus, and masala shots, which are kind of espresso-sized masala tea shots, basically. And so I think that kind of mindset from a very early age is really important, because the principles of entrepreneurship can actually hold you in very good stead for many other aspects of your life, professional life. And in terms of higher education, I think you mentioned what the role of higher education is. For me, and I guess as look, I'm the equivalent of a dean of a business school, okay? And for me and my team, it's really important that across all of our undergraduate and our postgraduate programs, our students and our learners have a foot in experiential learning, right? So it's not just stuff coming out of one of these textbooks, okay? They actually get out there and they experience what it is to be an entrepreneur, but they do so in a very safe space within the university, right? So if you're going to mess up, that's fine. It's within the confines of the university, not necessarily outside. Okay, there you go.
Thank you very much.
Based on your experiences, what are some key characteristics of being an entrepreneur?
Okay, so if I look at my own journey, both as a practitioner as well as an entrepreneur and a professional, okay, the key words that come to mind: motivation. You have to be motivated in whatever it is that you do, right? Because if you don't have the motivation and you don't have the passion, so motivation and passion, you're onto a non-starter. You have to be passionate about whatever it is that you do, whether you're writing a book or you're mowing the lawn or you're going for a job interview. You need to have vision. You need to know where you're heading. What are your goals? What short-term, medium-term, long-term goals do you have in mind? Have the confidence with which to actually execute that vision, and make those decisions based on the confidence that you have. So motivation, passion, vision, confidence, and decision-making. That's where I would put those key characteristics of an entrepreneur.
Something to think about.
Absolutely.
So do good leaders make good entrepreneurs and vice versa?
Do leaders make good entrepreneurs, and do good entrepreneurs make good leaders? Okay, so basically what you're referring to there, I guess, is entrepreneurial leadership, right? Which is a thing. Okay, go look it up. It's a thing. Because basically it's that mindset that focuses an organization on turning problems into opportunities that create economic and or social value. And I think good leaders or good entrepreneurs do make good leaders, yes, but it's not always the vice versa case, right? Good entrepreneurs will have an eye towards the future. Good entrepreneurs will have self-confidence. They'll have communication skills. They will have a big part to play in self-care, looking after oneself, adaptability, calculated risk-taking, education and continual learning, because entrepreneurs feel that, you know, they're always continuously learning. The decisiveness I've already talked about, and having a passion I've already talked about. I think those are the kind of the entrepreneurial leadership areas, and those are great for entrepreneurs. I don't always believe that they translate back to being good leaders, because I've come across many leaders who absolutely don't take care of their self, who don't expect others to take care of themselves, because they expect people to come into the office at 7 and leave at 11 in the night. And that's all the, you know, they have this organizational thinking, and that's not very entrepreneurial at all. So hope that answers your question there.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Now, I had a question. So have you ever encountered some examples in which you have seen the harmony between business, social, and intellectual entrepreneurship? Can all three coexist with each other?
Yes, they can, Vispi. Absolutely, they can. I touched very briefly earlier on the work that Shiraz and I did with Therapy on Hand, okay, which was our aromatherapy business. And yes, we had some economic value that came from it, okay? But there was a lot of intellectual value that we had started to develop, mainly looking at the slowing down of the deterioration in Alzheimer's through aromatherapy. But in terms of social value, yeah, absolutely, there was an abundance of social value there, you know, and so it wasn't for us just about making money, you know. It was more important for us that when our therapist went in and held someone's hand and massaged the hand and the elbow, you know, many of these people had, you know, late stages of Alzheimer's, dementia, couldn't talk, couldn't vocalize their thoughts. And for us, just knowing that someone is sitting there holding their hand, you know, and the aromatherapy was doing its job, okay, but that holding hand and the physical kind of eye contact, that was really important to us. So Therapy on Hand, I can give you numerous examples of my life as an academic, where I've engaged with people both on a paid basis, but also on a pro bono basis. I've spent countless hours talking to people about intellectual endeavor and their own intellectual endeavor and the journey that they want to take. And I, as an educator, have to say that I don't just teach, I actually invest in my learners. Now, I invest my time in their learning, and I know that that pays dividends, because my ex-learners 10, 15 years on will contact me to say, hey, Zub, hey, Professor, you know, when you were talking in class, we didn't quite get it. But having had 10 years of experience in the workplace now, we get what you were saying. We still remember your stories, because I'm big into narrative theory. I'm big into storytelling. I love to talk. I love to drink tea. And it's those stories in class that actually people remember more than a case from one of my textbooks, basically. Yeah.
That's really interesting. Thank you.
Pleasure.
What is the difference between a career and a naukri? How have Nawaz and you dealt with this distinction with your children?
Okay, so for any non-Gujarati speaking participants in the audience here, Farzin asks the difference between a career and a naukri. A naukri is the Gujarati word for a job, right? So what's the difference between a career and a job? I think both have differences, but I'm going to be slightly rude and provocative here, Farzin. I'm not going to get drawn into that argument between the differences between a career and a naukri or a job. And I'll tell you why, because both a career and a job revolve around life, okay? And I spoke to Nawaz about this morning. We were thinking about these sorts of issues. And for us, whether it's our career or our job, that's always revolved around our lives, right? So for instance, you know, as an academic, when we first had kids, Nawaz absolutely had the better paying job and the more high profile job with Volkswagen and or the Volkswagen group. And so when each of my kids were about 1.5 to 2 years old, after Nawaz had kind of, you know, finished breastfeeding or whatever, I then gave up my job. Yes, you're right. You heard me right. I gave up my job to actually be a stay-at-home dad. And it was the best times ever, because I saw my kids, you know, walk and talk for the first time. And of course, taking them to the mums and toddler group, where I'd be the only dad, was just a bonus kind of thing, you know. But you know, so careers and jobs, they come and go, people. You know, I'm not saying don't disregard them, they come and go, but they have a small part in your overall life. So your career and your job cannot be your entire life. You know, at certain times in your life. So I hope that answers some questions there.
Thank you.
You know, each generation is faced with new challenges. So can you share with us how parents/children should deal with these challenges?
Okay, so each generation, yeah, absolutely has challenges, and I think you see, look, I have a real problem with the word challenges. I used to have a colleague who used to sit in meetings, and he used to, you know, every so often in his dulcet tones, he'd sit there and he goes, yes, well, the challenge that we face, you know, and you basically knew that he was kind of saying, well, you know, we've got a problem here, but he would make that statement and leave it at that. And to me, that's a very negative way of going about it, you know. So I think that more than challenge there, I think let's use the word opportunity, because every generation has an opportunity to do something different, you know, to utilize the environment within which they live. Look at the resources that they have available to them. You know, my kids have a lot more than I had, you know, and I'm sure, you know, I had a lot more than my parents did, and so on and so forth. Okay, so look at the opportunities that are available. And you know, the tiny tots that currently exist in our world, the toddlers of this world, well, the toddlers of this world don't even know the kind of jobs that they're going to be doing in 20 years' time, you know. And so, you know, that's what they need to think about in terms of opportunity, you know, and embrace it, absolutely relish it, you know.
Yes, got it.
Thank you very much. I think now we'll go for the last round of questions from us. So my last question to you is, according to you, can you please explain the pros and cons of a large corporation talking about shareholder value and smaller private corporations and companies talking about stakeholder values?
Okay. Stakeholder value and shareholder value, you know, is just semiotics. It's just they're just words that we as individuals apply in different contexts. Okay, essentially, what are we talking about here with both sets, whether it's the small organizations or the large organizations? We're talking about being understood by the people that matter, right? And the people that matter are quite often the customers and the potential customers, the internal customers, stakeholders, employees, or the external ones, right? So the point that any organization or any individual leading an organization needs to bear in mind constantly is the words that are coming out of my mouth, are they appropriate for the people that I'm trying to speak with? And do the people that I'm speaking with understand the terminology, the words, the context that I'm spouting out? Because if they don't, then there's a bit of a mismatch, right? And they're not going to be able to decipher what I'm saying. So if I'm saying to them, look, here's my product, come and buy it. Yeah, I need to give them very clear instructions on where to go, what to buy, how much to buy, and so on and so forth. Okay, so it's that disconnect occasionally, or quite often rather, that both small, medium, and large organizations have, whether they're talking about stakeholder value or shareholder value. It amounts to the same thing. Are we being understood?
Got it. Thank you very much.
If you had to choose 2 skills to nurture in young children that would help benefit them for the rest of their lives, what would that be?
Okay, 2 skills. Okay, yeah, all right. Number 1, resilience. Okay, and number 2, self-learning and being independent. And let me qualify both of those. I've already partly qualified this by saying that the toddlers of today don't know about the jobs that they're going to be doing in 20 years' time, because those jobs haven't been invented yet. Okay, but those two skills of resilience and self-learning, I have been taught by 3 inspirational women in my life. Number 1 has to be my mum. Number 2 has to be my wife Nawaz, and number 3 has to be my surrogate mum, Gulu auntie, who I think is on the call, Gul Bilimoria. Big shout out, huge shout out to you. And each of these 3 women have shown me what resilience actually is in practice. You know, resilience through adversity, huge amounts of adversity, you know, but that the knowing that you just keep going, right? So yeah, resilience and self-learning. You know, don't rely on anybody else to do your learning. Go learn yourself. You know, there's plenty of material out there, and there's plenty of people that you can talk to and ask questions. Keep asking those freaking questions, you know, because the more questions you ask, the more answers you get, and the more fodder you've got to actually develop your thinking with.
I try to teach my high school students that as well.
Bang on. High five.
Please share with us how to effectively manage maintaining your network with the community.
Okay, maintaining a network within the community. Gosh, that's an interesting one, Zeaan there. Okay, without wishing to be controversial here, I'm just going to be honest and say it how it is, okay? I think the answer to that question in terms of maintaining a network with a community or within our community is be genuine. Yeah, be genuine. What I mean by that is that there are too many people within the community who are either false or who have some form of inflated ego. And that's not right, you know? So be genuine is number 1 thing. Number 2 is engage in conversation with folks, you know, not engaging in conversation with the thought that actually, if I speak to this one, he'll be able to help me or she'll be able to help me. Just engage in conversation, be empathetic, you know, what's the commonality that we share, right? But that's just one very small part of our lives. the commonality that we all share, the fact that we're all Jatosti, right? There are many, many, many more facets to each of us as individuals that we actually never get to see because we never get the chance to talk to each other outside of our kind of sort of, community functions or whatever, right? So be genuine, engage in conversation, be empathetic to individuals. And I think if you can do all of those three, then you will develop some genuine relationships, and you will be able to continue those relationships in your network for many years to come.
That was really insightful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zeaan.
Thank you very much. This was the end of our dialogue session. And after this wonderful event, I would like to hand over to Farrokh to continue.
Farrokh, you're still on mute, Farrokh.
Thank you, Farzin. Thank you, Neville. It's really delightful to have you all talk about such wonderful and beautiful things. And it is now my pleasure to invite Rustom, engineer, to seek the first question to Zubin.
Thank you, Farrokh. Just wanted to find out this. First of all, thanks a lot for Zubin for an excellent life story that we heard, and it's very inspirational, I'm sure, to all of us, no matter how old or young we are. What I'm interested in finding out is what brought about this metamorphosis in you. You were a sort of a fun-loving kid, or maybe irresponsible at times and things like that, and suddenly became a responsible academician. What brought about that change?
Oh, do you know what? Rustom, thanks for that question. Responsibility came knocking on my door when I was 10 years old, when my dad left. And as the male in the family, as the oldest male, I did what I had to do. In terms of work and career, I didn't have a foggy clue as to where life would take me. So I bumbled around from job to job. And it wasn't until I was about 30 years old, my daughter had just been born, that I realized that actually the work that I'd been doing for the previous 2 years in terms of teaching part-time evening courses was my vocation, that I really enjoyed that, And so the very short answer to you is to basically say that, responsibility comes at different times in our lives. And there shouldn't be any societal pressure on anyone to think just because, you're now 18 or 19 or 20, you're an adult, you're going off to university, that you have to work in these conventional ways. When it happens and you embrace it, fantastic. For me, it came later on in life. Even when my daughter was born, Nawaz and I both questioned whether we were fit to be parents, whether we were responsible enough to be parents. And I still question, whether I'm a responsible person, because one of the slides that I didn't put up this time is me on my little boosted board, which is an electric skateboard that does 24 miles per hour. It's a suicide machine. Is that a responsible thing to do for a 52-year-old man? Probably not, but hey, life's all about living, right? And just, taking those calculated risks and enjoying yourself at the same time. So, take responsibility seriously, but not too seriously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Karishma has a question for you.
Zubin?
Yeah. Hi.
Thank you for that spectacular session. Truly inspirational.
Thank you.
However, you didn't tell us enough about the fact that what we perceive is that you're giving back to the Prince's trust by now must be way in excess of what they invested in you when you needed it.
Yeah.
How would you respond to that, please?
I'd respond by simply saying that that's not a measure that I've ever thought about or ever will think about. So as soon as I've finished answering this question, it'll disappear out of my psyche, because that's, I don't do, you know, I didn't do it for any other reason apart from the fact that when I needed someone to be there, okay, the uncle that I went to, and it was the only uncle that I knew who had a bit of money back then, couldn't help me or didn't want to help me, okay? But I found someone who did help me and had the faith in me, and gave me the money, which I never paid back or didn't have to pay back. And so, you know, and the thing is, look, as an academic, let's be honest, okay? I'm not rich. I don't have oodles of money, okay? You know, I can't help businesses with startup finance, but I do have time, I do have experience, and I do have some intellect, you know, and if I can give those freely to whoever needs it for however long they need it, then so be it, you know. That's my kind of contribution, and it is not measured. You know, like I say, I have students who are knocking on my door from other courses and other parts of the university who say, oh, Zubin, I've been told that, you know, you have an expertise in entrepreneurship. I've got this entrepreneurial idea. Can I have half an hour of your time? And I kid you not, more often than not, half an hour turns into 3 hours sitting in our coffee shop called the Brasserie, you know, having a very interesting conversation. But, and that's what I mean by investing in my learners, you know. I may not have money to invest in, but I certainly have the time to be able to invest in their learning. So same goes with the Princess Trust businesses that I've had the pleasure and privilege of working with over the years.
And for those who don't know, the same has gone with people he meets. The first thing he told my mum when he spoke to her on the phone was, Auntie, how may I help you? And this continues with his work and the team's work in the Zoroastrian Senior Citizens Project, the CZC.
Thank you. Well, apparently, you know, and look, fate works in mysterious ways. Apparently, my name, Zubin, the Avestan translation apparently there are two meanings. One, it's a short dagger, right, like a javelin or a spear. The other meaning is apparently helper. So I was destined to help folks. What can I say? That's down to my mum for naming me Zubin.
Great. I would now like that there are two people I think that we'd love to hear from. One is Dolly, his mum, and the other is Gul, his inspiration. So Dolly, a few words from you. Unmute yourself, please.
I have a great son, and he is truly a helper. He's helped me all my life. If he wasn't there, I wouldn't be here today. That's all I can say. Thank you, Zubin, for being in my life.
Thank you. Gul?
Gul auntie, please unmute yourself.
Can't hear you, Gul auntie. Unmute yourself, Gul auntie. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Thanks for accepting and learning all the lessons I've done to you for all the years. You've done well in your life. God bless you.
Oh, thank you, Gul auntie. You're one of the most resilient women that I know, who just keeps going regardless. So you're an inspiration to all of us, old and young. Yeah, love you. God bless you. Thank you.
Great. I'd like to call on Mayor Amasad to say a few words.
Well, first of all, Zubin, thank you very, very much for the enlightening presentation that you made. One thing that didn't come up was, I think people should know that your PhD thesis examined the entrepreneurial marketing activities of the Zarathustrian entrepreneur, which was kind of a remarkable way to see how the Zarathustri philosophy has been ingrained in your spirit of entrepreneurship that you're teaching. That's one thing. Second thing you didn't mention was that he earned his financial freedom at the age of 22, which is another remarkable feature about Zubin, which you need to be given a round of applause for that. Having said that, Percy Master started by saying that life is about making an impact, not just making an income. And I believe that is what all your presentation was focused on. So thank you, Percy, for setting the tone. And you focused on mentioning how to capitalize on the wisdom of the senior generation to build a promise in our future generation. I want to commend you for that. I really want to commend you for saying that. Another thing that I was very much impressed by what you talked about success and failure are both teachers. And I think I completely agree with you. Being an educator myself. You talked about life skills being an integral part of entrepreneurship leading into a business of possibilities, which was another remarkable thing that you mentioned that I really, really appreciated. Finally, you did talk about something that really got my attention between the career and the job. You mentioned about it doesn't matter whether you have a career or a job. What matters is that we are making a difference. And that was quite a remarkable statement that you made. In life has to be focused on making a difference. Having said that, I want to give you my complementing perspective on career versus a job. To me, a job makes something for you. A career makes something of you. Once you focus on making something of you, everything for you follows. Thank you for the enlightening presentation. God bless you, and I commend you for the absolute beautiful
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, sir.
Bless you.
Thank you, Mayor. Just as Mayor was talking, there's a post by Kayamas Dotiwala. He said, please ask the following question on my behalf. Zubin, Zartustis once were captains of industry. Why has our community not been able to produce another Tata or Zuckerberg or Musk with all the support structure we have as a community? Your thoughts?
Too many inflated egos, Farrokh. I think, way back in history, there was a very real sense of social entrepreneurship, even though perhaps the words social entrepreneurship weren't used. That was the ethos and the thinking behind the work that our forefathers had put into not just business, but the societies within which they lived. Over the years, that has somewhat waned, perhaps, egos have kind of have gotten in the way. I think it's not a completely lost cause. There are pockets of our community that are doing some amazing work as individuals, and in small teams where egos don't play a part. But I think if we as a community really took a long, hard look at ourselves and decided that we really wanted to abide by the three tenets, of good thoughts, words, and deeds. As I said to you earlier on, I'm not overtly religious, so please don't get me wrong as some sort of religious fanatic. However, these are just principles by which all of us could lead our lives, and if we did so, I think the world would be a much better place, and our community would be a much nicer community to live within.
Thank you. And with that, we are going to our closing remarks. And the first person on this for the closing remarks, I call on Zubin Sethna.
Thank you, Farrokh. My closing remarks are very short and sweet. I'm going to say never give up. Okay, never, ever give up. Even if you feel like it. Even if you feel like it, okay? My mum taught me that because she tried to give up. She felt like giving up, but she didn't. Life throws all sorts of stuff at you, positive and negative. And remember that learning also happens, even after negative impacts or failures, as Mayor called them, especially so after failures. But we need to embrace failure. We need to embrace that negativity, and we need to ask ourselves the questions: what can we learn from this? What mistakes shan't we make the next time round? Okay. So that's one thing. And my last comment really is that, doing good in whatever shape or form it takes, whatever shape or form, however little or however much, right? Doing good is really incredibly satisfying, for your own soul, not necessarily to kind of say, well, if I do good, this much good, I'm going to get this much, praise, when we get to the Chinmad Bridge and all the rest of it. It's not about that. We're here on this earth, do good and it's satisfying, basically. So go forth, do good, and embrace everything that life has to throw at you, from whichever perspective, whether it's work or fun or whatever, just embrace everything and live life and enjoy it. So thank you. That's my closing statement there.
Edul?
Thank you. Before I make my closing statement, firstly, Zubin, fantastic, absolutely inspirational. To be the first spotlight, we chose the right person, and you're absolutely great. But I'd like to do a little commercial before I start my comment. Most of you are aware of ZF, which is the Zoroastrian Entrepreneurship Development Foundation. We have $30,000 loan available for students who want to study entrepreneurship. Now, wouldn't it be fantastic for someone here to work under Zubin at Regents and take advantage of the scholarship? It's there waiting to be taken. So please spread the word and let's get some students applying for it for the next academic year. It's an opportunity which should not be wasted. Now, coming back to my formal statements, Zubin, Spotlight is a relatively new webinar series. And in Zubin Sethna, we found the perfect candidate for our first Spotlight webinar. Zubin clearly demonstrated that from a very early age, he had the uncanny desire to seize every opportunity and benefit from it. Intuitively, he would see the opportunity, pursue it with a vision, passion, persistence, take action, and reap the rewards. And this was practicing entrepreneurship. His parents' divorce had a marked impact on him, but everything has a silver lining, and it forced him to grow up, mature fast, and help support his family monetarily. His comments about the need for parents to talk about entrepreneurship to their children on the dining table is of utmost importance. He clearly brought out that risk is not a four-letter dirty word. Entrepreneurs take calculated risk, but never gamble. His life's journey has been fascinating, and in the process, he has created not only economic value, but also social value and intellectual value. Thank you, Zubin, for sharing your inspiring stories. Thanks also to the ZFN team with Farrokh as moderator, Karishma as synthesizer, Vispi Karkaria, Farzin Avari, Zeaan Pithawala, and Yazdi Tantra for their participation and valuable inputs. Last but not the least, thanks to the participants, especially the youth, I'm sure, were inspired to take on the world and make a difference in the lives of many. Thank you, Zubin, again.
Thank you, Edul. Yazdi Tantra is on vacation, so he's not here today. Otherwise, this is what he would have said. We would like to continue the dialogue, and we would like you to provide feedback at zoroastrianfacultynetwork.org. All our webinars are recorded and they're uploaded to a YouTube channel, and they're available for everybody to take a look at. And so please feel free to do that and spread the word. Next year, we are going to have 12 spotlights. 9 of them will be organized by the WZCC, and 3 will be organized by the WZCC ZFN. This spotlight today was a trial run for the WZCC ZFN spotlight. So thank you all very much. And now I invite Karishma to turn off the recording. And those who would like to stick around and chat on any topic, anything that you'd like to do, please do so, and we will continue the conversation. Thank you all very much. And particularly Zubin, all the best.